Guys, we finally got patch notes. We finally got patch notes. And, oh my lord, by the grace of God, there's a Fiora nerf in those patch notes. I cannot believe it. Let's freaking go! How's it going, YouTube? Welcome to a brand new video on the channel with your boy Optima. Today we will be doing some discussing of the meta since we did just get the 2.5.0 patch in Legends of Runeterra, which was a very huge, highly anticipated patch that many people were not even playing the game because of how much they wanted this patch. So very impactful, and I thought it'd definitely be something worthwhile to discuss on the channel. So if this sounds like a video you will enjoy, please stick around and yeah, just give it a chance. And anyone who's new, you can feel free to subscribe, and definitely if you want to support the video, leave a like, and especially, way more important than everything else, leave a comment so that we can keep these discussions rolling on the channel. I would definitely love to hear from you guys. Nevertheless, thanks for watching as always, and yeah, let's get into this patch. And the way I wanted to go about getting into this patch was also evaluating it alongside the Reddit perception of balance survey that was conducted by a Twitter user that goes by David Nalskog. He may have further influence in the Legends of Runeterra community that I don't know about, as I do consider myself a newbie when it comes to like the community of Legends of Runeterra, like who does what and all that. So I'm still figuring out what everyone's role is, but apparently he used to do these he used to do videos on Legends of Runeterra a lot more, because he was saying how this is like his first video in a while. But either way, I'll have a link in the description to David Nalskog's socials, because he is the one who conducted the survey, so definitely want to make sure he gets his due credit for that. So check him out in the description below for his Twitter, and definitely for the YouTube video where he breaks down the survey results with Lobster, another one of my favorite streamers. So definitely worth checking out for sure. But I wanted to wait. The reason I wanted to wait, because I knew the patch notes were on the horizon, and I think it'd be really cool to evaluate what the community wanted based on what we actually got in this patch. So yeah, I thought that'd be a really fun thing to do, and I'm kind of down to just kind of hop into it. So patch 2.5.0 notes, super huge patch that we definitely needed in this game. And obviously me, I'm a very vocal person on my opinions as far as like what is good for balance, so I'll definitely have a little bit to say here. If you agree, feel free to disagree, feel free to agree, whatever. I would love to hear why or why not, why you agree with me or why you do not agree with me in the comment section below. That would be very awesome, so we can just kind of understand other players' perspectives a little bit more. It's always good to have some healthy discussion going. But anyways, so what they say at first is just how, as a rule of thumb, a 55% win rate and 15+% play rate are our normal benchmarks for corrective balance. So if a card exceeds these thresholds, then they feel the need to balance it, to nerf it pretty much. And that seems a little high, but I kind of get it. But yeah, anyways, so obviously definitely TF Fizz falls under that threshold at 56.4%. So that definitely got hit with a swift nerf. And Fiora Shin even exceeds that threshold. I was very vocal about how solid this deck is performing, which is actually it's actually not the main issue with the deck. The main issue with the deck is not that a deck like this should not be good. It's the fact that even if it's good or not, it's just not fun to play against, and it just feels bad. But anyways, definitely performing well with a broken win the game effect, and yeah. 56.4% there. It looks like a Zerlution slipped underneath it. Bilgewater Targan, so Aphelios TF, was able to slip underneath it, as well as Aphelios Zoe was able to slip underneath it. But they did say that there's exceptions to that number. Not everything needs to reach that number for them to feel the need to intervene, and that's very fair, because I think there's a lot of things that feel bad to play against that aren't necessarily performing the best. And then Sejuani Renekton seems to be just right below that. And I do still kind of believe Ruin Runner could have used some type of nerf, and we didn't get that. Twisted Fate is the first card we see on the patch notes, and it looks like he, rather than doing anything to his stats, thank the Lord they didn't do anything to his stats as a nerf, they made it to where he needs 9+ cards to level up. So that's pretty good to see. Twisted Fate was obviously leveling way too easy, and I wasn't a person who really wanted to see this card nerfed to the ground, because I thought it was a lot of the cards around him, such as Stress Testing, such as Wiggly Burbles, such as Ballistic Bots, such as Mind Melt, all those cards. I thought all those cards, oh, and definitely Pick a Card, the biggest one I really wanted to see nerf. I thought all those were contributing to TF's kind of stronghold on the meta, and not so much TF itself. So good to see they didn't go overboard with the nerf of this card. I thought this was pretty solid, and I hope it's significant though, but it felt pretty solid. Then, however, we quickly get into some of my disappointment, and I'm not super thrilled with this. I know a lot of people think this is so crazy because of how many cards at least reach the 2-attack threshold so that they can attack into this, now that Fiora was nerfed to a 3-2 rather than staying at 3-3, and then also as a 4-3 in its level up rather than a 4-4. I know a lot of people think this is such a big deal. I feel like this deck can adjust to this, because we've seen with TF and Aphelios, I know those are kind of just sit in the back champions and they don't necessarily partake in combat in the same way Fiora does, but still, we've seen 2 health champions do a lot in the meta. So I have a lot of trouble believing that just throwing this to 2 is immediately going to change everything. And then my other issue is just that I just still think that this is the issue. You should just not have a win the game effect that is this easy to achieve. Like, just make Fiora where that's not her whole identity. Make it to where she can be doing something else as she's trying to win the game through that effect. You can keep that. Just make it way more difficult to kill 6 units, 8 units, whatever, but have her doing some other added effects, such as damaging the Nexus for every enemy unit she kills, something like that. I just think in its current design, there's no ideal way to make this work rather than doing something completely different, in my opinion, not changing its stats. And I'm not huge on stat changes for nerfs anyways. I feel like, because that's what we saw with Aphelios in the last patch, was that they tried to just nerf Aphelios down in health by 1, so it was no longer a 3-3, and we saw how insignificant that was. So I don't know. I'm erring on the side that I'm not in love with this, but we'll see what happens. From there, we get a very expected and a very needed Jarvan buff. Just for me, I was very excited to hopefully get one of the champions I actually play buffed, but I don't really like Jarvan. Nothing about him is that appealing to me, and initially I didn't even really understand what his level up was even saying, so that also factored into me not being a huge fan of his. So yeah, I didn't really care about this, but this was very necessary, so kudos to the team for getting that one addressed. Another Shyvana buff, very needed. The game will be better if Shyvana can work, just like any champion. So good to see that she got nerfed in stats, but Fairy is back as a stat. Like, she should have always had Fairy. So good to see. Lulu, another champion that needed a buff. I still think if no one's playing Leona needed a buff more than pretty much all these champions, in my opinion, since no one's playing her. But Lulu definitely not a card that was having any fun in the meta at all. So yeah, also a card that did need to be buffed, and yeah, cool to see. But I really dislike the support mechanic. I do not like using cards that rely on support. So yeah, Lulu and Taric are 2 of the champions I've used the absolute least. So just not a big deal to me again. Would have liked to see Katarina and some other things get buffed. Katarina, Nocturne, Leona. Anyways, though, Pick a Card does go down to 2. Very, very good to see. Very impactful. This is the spice. But yeah, nerfing that down to 2, doing the same thing. Huge deal. Wiggly Burble, more spice. Absolutely get this card down to a 2-1. Iterative improvement, allowing it to be a 4-2 was causing so many issues. But yeah, good to see that that's a little nerfed there. We got the 1-drop of the deep mechanic, the Dreggers. Oh my god, that is such a tongue twist. But yeah, that going to 2-1 is a very big deal. This card felt so significant every time it's played. But I don't know, it tosses 3. That's a lot for a 1-drop, so that could be really strong. I could see Deep honestly making a pretty solid comeback. Good to see we got this, but I don't know, I'm still a little nervous about this card right here. We got the cost down, so you can no longer do the concurrent timelines Ledros into Dreadweight combo, which felt very uninteractive. I lost that a few times, and every time it's just like, bro, like what? I just have to hope they don't have that. So yeah, good to see that that's not a thing anymore, but I will say that I'm nervous about this being an 8-drop because, yeah, it has a really strong effect. Like, doubling all damage dealt by card effects is, by skill spells and allies, like, yeah, that's pretty strong. So this card could really see some shine in this meta. But we'll have to see, though, just because I do think the meta's in a place, and especially with the Fiora nerf and what we're going to get into later, with some champions being nerfed that were disaligned aggro to be great, I think aggro is going to be really strong again, and I have trouble believing that some of these higher drop units will be able to find viability unless they're in very defensive decks, like decks that are just trying to play defensive until they get to this point, which this may eventually find a home in, but I think initially people are probably going to build decks with this not defensive enough, and aggro is just going to go through it. Anyways, though, Shadow Assassin going to a 2-1. I like to see this change because, yeah, another card that just 1-2 that just didn't make any sense. Like, 1-2 is such a bad stat line because it almost feels like nothing's gonna attack that's gonna only do it's gonna only do 1. So yeah, just really bad. Fade Guide. I really like to see a Fade Guide buff. This is honestly a pretty good card. So it's cool to see it even got buffed a little further, so it can be less than just the utility it offers. So really cool to see. I must say. Legion Rear Guard is now a 3/2, which makes sense because of like yeah, it just wasn't making sense with some of the other cards like the Shirima aggro cards and stuff like that. So if it can't block, then you got to make it a little stronger. So definitely a change that was not surprising. The Sea Scarab, this card's so scary now. This going to 2/3 is very scary because, yeah, now this can trade into a lot. It can do a decent bit of damage. Like, yeah, this is a big deal. I don't know why some people are downplaying this. This is a big deal because this is already a really good card in Deep. So yeah, I think that's a big deal. This shouldn't be that impactful. The Esteemed Hierophant. I don't see this being too impactful because this card's just not that good, if we're being honest. Yes, it has a pretty good stat line, but I don't know, just the utility it offers isn't great, and I think there's just a lot of 3-drops with some really great effects, and I just don't think this is that great. But if you're playing a really Sun Disc focused I can see this finding viability. The Colossus Bone Crusher, she is now a 6/4 instead of a 6/3. This is a card I kept looking at because it feels like it should work so easily in Scargrounds, but yeah, that 6/3 was just throwing me off, so it's good to see that got changed. So maybe this card can actually be used in decks that either focus on reputation or focus on like Scargrounds, which should still give you reputation eventually. From there, we got all the phased weapons up to 3. Another one of the spiciest things that happened in this patch. A lot of people are saying Tri-Beam is a new strategy with this, but I would take Tri-Beam over what we were dealing with these at 2 every day. So we'll see how that goes. Gifts from Beyond went back to 1, not a huge deal. And then obviously the last huge change was that Temple will now only give +1/+0 rather than the +1/+1. That's a pretty big deal, but I did already hear a little bit through the grapevines of people saying the issue is the mana, not the stat boost, and I do pretty much agree. So we're going to have to see if this actually ends up being impactful, because I could also see this not actually being that impactful, because it's more so the mana that you just keep gaining back that is honestly the issue with this, because then it allows Targon to be a lot more fast-paced than it is otherwise. This is a very notorious thing that Bruised by God kept saying, and I highly agree with it. Veld Temple allowed a slow region in Targon to become very fast, and that's an issue because Evoke is extremely strong. And yeah, we'll get into things like Invoke not getting addressed. So we're just going to go through like different champions and different cards that the community either very much so wanted to see nerfed or buffed, and we will say our 2 cents on if we agree with that. but Elise apparently fair. Maokai, some people definitely thought he could use a buff, but I did not want to see this. I did not want to see Maokai get a buff because Maokai is very strong if he levels up. In some games you have the perfect hand, you're able to level him up so easy. So I was very fine with Maokai not getting any any buff, and I think they still addressed deep. So I think this was addressed, just not in the way people want it, but still addressed. Nocturne not getting addressed, I'm pretty disappointed in that. I would have liked to see Nocturne have something done, because I just think no one's playing him, and that says something. So I would have liked something done there. Tresh fair, Kindred fair, Hecarim fair. Stalking Shadows, nothing but a Caretaker. That's still mostly in the middle. Doom Beast mostly in the middle. Atrocity, definitely some people with issues with Atrocity. I'm going to say I'm glad to see nothing happen to Atrocity, just because I don't think enough happened to the other regions that are more oppressive than Atrocity and Shadow Isles. So unless you really nerf those other regions, I don't think you can take Shadow Isles away from, or Atrocity away from Shadow Isles. That's my perspective, and nothing on Spectral Matron. So yeah, anyways, we get over to Demacia, and we got Lucian, who didn't get any buffs or anything. We did get the Fiora change, and this was obviously a huge deal for the community, as pretty much no one aired on the side of saying, like, no, this card needs to be buffed. Like, nobody. Few people said it's fine, but majority said it's pretty broken to very broken. So yeah, very good that Riot listened, and we were able to get this done. I know this survey didn't come out before they got all this planned, but the community's been very vocal about disliking the way Fiora operates, and considering that her win rate also was pretty high, it was good to see that this was definitely addressed. I just don't know how good of a nerf that was, but definitely good to just see that it was addressed. Shyvana, a very solid majority of the community feeling like she needs to have something done, and they did give her a buff, so that's cool to see there as well. Decent bit of people for Garen, but not the majority by any means. Same with Quinn. Lux had quite a lot of people wanting a buff for Lux, so I will say for me, Lux was a unfortunate one to not see something done. I would have liked Lux to have a little bit of help, give her some stat boosts or something, because 6 drops are just in such an awkward place, and then especially if the nerf to Fiora and the nerf to Aphelios really does allow aggro to start even going crazier than it already was starting to, then 6 drop champions are just going to feel worse the more aggro shines. So yeah, I think Lux should have got a buff for sure. Jarvan got his buff, and honestly, not even a huge enough amount of the community actually was saying it as I would expect it, honestly. But either way, he was able to get his buff, and it makes sense since he was just recently released, and they haven't really been able to tamper and really find that do much with him. So this is the first of anything that they've even had the opportunity to do to make Jarvan more viable. So it makes sense that they chose to do that. Ranger Resolves, most saw it fair. Sharp Sight, most see that as a decent bit of people see it as a little unfair. But nothing happened to that, nothing to Golden Aegis, and nothing to Concerted Strike. From there, we get to Freljord, and we had a decent bit of people saying Lyssandra's broken. I feel like this was just worded poorly in this survey, though, where you really needed to ask about the Watcher as a separate card from Lysandra, because Lysandra herself by no means needs to be nerfed, in my opinion, but the Watcher as an effect of Lysandra, in my opinion, certainly does need to be nerfed. So that's where it's just a little tricky to ask people this question and expect them to understand what exactly you're talking about. But yeah, I put nerf though. I put this at a 5 just because I think since we weren't asked about the Watcher, then yeah, I really think the Watcher needs to be addressed, especially now with the Fiora nerf and the Aphelios and TF nerfs. Lysandra Trundle can really start running shop on the entire meta. Like that could be a thing. So just because we don't really know that, I think you should address things that are toxic, and then if they're too bad, then you can just buff. But I don't know, in my opinion, I'd rather things be nerfed that feel bad and then re-evaluate it later, rather than just allowed to go and then wait to evaluate it, because the chance that it creates a toxic atmosphere is a lot higher doing it that way, in my opinion. But that is just my opinion, and these devs probably know a lot more than me, so you guys don't have to factor in my opinion too much. But yeah, that's That's how I feel on that one. From there, though, we get to Braum, he's fair, Ashe is fair, Trundle, Sejuani, Anivia, and Tryndamere all fair. Three Sisters fair, Troll Chant. Some people were against, not enough in my opinion for anything to happen, and nothing else with Battle Fairy or Blighted Ravine. From there we get over to PNZ, and PNZ is going to, people said Teemo's fair, Ezreal's fair, Jinx is fair. I don't agree with that. I think Jinx is a little broken. I actually put her at a 5. I think she feels very bad when you play against discard aggro. Like, she feels too good in that. And once again, yeah, I just knew with some of the inevitable nerfs coming that Jinx may, Jinx discard aggro may just run shop on a lot of the meta. Heimerdinger, look at these numbers on Heimerdinger, and no buff, bro. No buff with those numbers. Very disappointing. Very disappointing. You gotta buff something with that many people there. They must really believe in this card that we just haven't found the optimal deck. And then Vi had some alright numbers, nothing too crazy, but some alright numbers for people wanting a buff. Poro Cannon, perfect, pretty fine. Concurred Timelines, a lot of difference of opinions here, but I think at least with the Dreadway combo getting addressed, I'm okay with where we're at with that. Stress testing, some people against it. I just thought pick a card's the bigger issue that allows stress testing to feel worse. Ballistic Bot, I have no issue with it all. So glad to see, even with this amount of 4s, nothing done there. And then Tri-Beam and Improbulator. Most people thinking that is a very fair card. Get over to Noxus now. We got Draven, fair. LeBlanc, fair. Katarina, buff. Look how many people are saying buff Katarina. But I think it's been kind of addressed how difficult it really is to buff Katarina with the way she works. So I kind of get it, but I don't know. You just gotta make her spell just better. Her spell's so bad in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. Riven's a decent bit of people saying Riven needs a buff. This honestly surprised me, but yeah, I can slightly agree with it. And yeah, I definitely would have been against seeing something because yeah, she, especially with the way the meta went, Riven seemed to have really had to take a backseat, just not being quick enough. Darius fair, and for most people, Vladimir being fair as well. And another thing I want to address is just that's one thing I try to give the devs a little sympathy for when it comes to balancing this game or any game, any competitive game. Is you always have to think of the trickle-down effects of any decision you make. So it's like, all right, if we're going to nerf this strategy that was very polarizing and was causing certain things to not be viable, how much is that going to shift what then becomes better, what's then allowed to shine more, what then reaches its full potential because its most oppressing matchup has been nerfed significantly. And honestly, a lot of people have said it. I agree with them. Lissandra Trundle looks like a deck that can really run shop with the nerfs and buffs that we got. And if that's the case, then I think if that's the case, then I just think you have to address the Watcher situation. Like, I just think you have to. But once again, I guess that's just my idea, but I think it should have been addressed. Anyways, the end of Noxus is going to have Ravenous Flock. I would have been very okay with seeing a nerf to Ravenous Flock. 4 damage just seems like too much, but that's just my opinion. Crimson Bloodletter, Whispered Words, Bloody Business, and the Leviathan, all mostly fair. From there, we get into Ionia. Some people wanted a Zed buff, but most realizing he's pretty alright. Lulu, extreme numbers for a buff, and we did get a Lulu buff, so cool for the Lulu fans that they got their buff. I definitely put Lulu at 1 as well, so good to see that they got that one done. Shin, very fair. Yasuo having a decent bit of people saying that he needs a buff, but I guess not pulling enough 1s like some of the other cards. Karma, decent bit of people as well saying please buff, but not that staggering. And then definitely a lot more mixed numbers than I would have liked to have seen on Lee Sin here, because yeah, I think once again another card, once all those really oppressive Aphelios TF and all those cards are gone, guess what card loves coming and wrecking shop in a couple of turns? Lee Sin. And Lee Sin decks can stall very easy because they got the freaking Eye of the Dragon. This freaking really, honestly, this card needed to be nerfed. I'm pretty sure I did 5 or at least 4, but yeah, this card needed to be nerfed just because yeah, it can just stall until Lee Sin comes down. And yeah, it just has way too good a synergy with Lee Sin in my opinion. And they allow each other to be broken. Now Nopify balanced, Riven Shaper balanced, for the most part. Conclusive Palm balance, and Deny balance. From there we got over to Bilgewater, and in Bilgewater we got is Fizz balanced? Absolutely. Only broken because TF was broken and the cards around them were broken. Misfortune, very balanced. Twisted Fate, extremely unbalanced, so very good to see those numerous changes to him and his champ spells. So good to see. Tom Kinch, fair, and Gangplank, fair. Nautilus, some people wanting a buff, but very glad to also not see a Nautilus buff. Most people thinking Box to Puss is fair. I thought so too, other than when summoned through the Crescendum, but with Crescendum now being 3, that should feel a lot less oppressive. But I don't know, I still don't really like the idea of him coming down as a 3-4 with Crescendum. I think he should be a 3-1. Zap Sprayfish, some people really still hating this card, but me thinking, I don't know, I think it's fine. Pick a card, thank the Lord they changed this one, even though there was a decent bit of disparity in how people felt about this, but literally no one's saying it's a bad card, but still, good to see that they actually addressed that. Wiggly Bravlefish, insane numbers, so very good to see that that got addressed as well. And then we get to Targon, and Targon, Zoe was not addressed, even though we got a lot of 4s here. The community would have probably liked that. And I think I definitely put a 4. I just think Zoe can be very oppressive at times. Diana, being fair. Soraka being fair. Aphelios broken, so we saw the nerf to all the weapons. Leona, a decent bit of people wanting a buff, but just not enough with the ones, and that's just unfortunate because I think Leona really needs a buff. And then Taric, how does Taric get this much love? I think Taric is better than Leona in my opinion, like absolutely better than Leona. Why do more people think he needs a buff? I just don't get that. And then Asol being very fair. Hush, okay numbers there, not a ton saying it's broken. Vel Temple, a decent bit saying it's broken, so we did see a nerf there. Mountain Scryer, pretty fair. The Fangs, fair. Star Shaping, this was surprising to me, and definitely a huge disappointment for me, was to not see a Star Shaping nerf, as well as like doing something about Invoke as well. I think Invoke is a little too easy to get really good cards, but definitely Star Shaping. I think this shows the community would have been for it as well. Then we get, last but not least, we get to Shirima, and Shirima is going to have Azir, which most people think are fair, Renekton fair, Severe fair, Talia too bad. And if you're going to buff Jarvan, can you please buff Talia? Talia's not good. Doubling a landmark, especially now that Veld Temple got nerfed, is not good. Like, buff this card. This was really disappointing. I was very disappointed to not see a Talia buff. And then Gnosis, fair. Dunekeeper, a decent bit of people thinking it's too good, but I'm okay with where it's at. Pakai Reaper, fair. And Shapestone, decent numbers saying it's a little broken, but nothing too staggering. Rite of Negation, fair for the most part. And Ruin Runner. This has some pretty interesting numbers here, but I don't think just enough 5s, but I definitely put a 5. I think Ruin Runner is just a little too good, but that's just how I feel about a 6-4 behind Spell Shield. But yeah, that is going to be how the survey stacks up to the actual patch notes. And I would say for the most part, it appears that we did get a decent bit of things addressed. So I would say at the end of the day, even if it wasn't addressed in the way I would prefer, thank God these things that most people want to see addressed got addressed. TF addressed, Veld Temple addressed, Wiggly Burble addressed, Aphelios addressed, Dreadway concurrent timelines combo addressed. Buff on Lulu, buff on Shyvana, buff on Jarvan. What was some of those other ones? The weapons addressed, which is pretty much Aphelios. Deep addressed. People wanted deep to be a little bit better. Pick a card addressed. Oh my lord, pick a card addressed. That was the one. And then Fiora, yeah, if I didn't say that already, Fiora addressed. So I feel like they hit at least a lot of the big ones. There's a little bit more that I would have liked to have seen, especially on the buff side. I don't think they they should have addressed a few more buffs in my opinion, like Nocturne, like Leona, maybe Yasuo, but definitely like Katarina. And then, I think you nerf the Watcher. You nerf Star shaping. Yeah, I think it's star shaping. You nerf star shaping. You probably nerf Zoe a little, in my opinion. And then you go about some of those nerfs that they did a little differently, but yeah, overall, I don't think bad at all. I like this could have been way worse. Oh yeah, you buffed Talia for sure. So for the most part, yeah, they addressed what we needed to see addressed. I think at the end of the day, what this is going to come down to is how does it actually affect the meta. I could easily see the meta going into a very aggro state, which in my personal opinion is not good for Legends of Runeterra, just because aggro games tend to be fast-paced. They tend to seem like it's not necessarily fully true, but it is to a certain extent, in my opinion, that most aggro decks have a very simple route of how you want to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So in my opinion, they do require on average less brain power than other decks, but that's not always true. But it is a thing. And then also lastly, aggro matchups just always, in my opinion, seem a lot less climatic. And I think suspense, climaxes, that stuff matters in the esports for this game. So I just think aggro being one of the best decks is not good for Legends of Runeterra. So I hope the meta doesn't go into an aggro state. And then my other hope is that to answer the aggro, that then Lissandra Trundle doesn't start running shop on the entire meta, because I still think the Watcher is in a bad place. So we'll just really have to see what this factors in, and then see if Fiora actually... Is that a significant Fiora nerf? I don't know. I'm erring on the side of no. Sorry, I didn't mean to hit my desk, but I'm erring on the side of no. But once again, I guess we'll have to see. But yeah, I'm excited for the most part. A lot of things I wanted to get addressed got addressed in some shape, way, or form. And I think the game will definitely be more fun, which at the end of the day should be the biggest thing with these balance patches. But that's going to be my 2 cents. But prior to playing any of the post-patch meta, because we don't get the post-patch meta until tomorrow. So I will be doing a video later this week that you guys won't see probably to the following week with Serene Grace, where we will be kind of going over what are our early overreactions in the new meta as far as what is currently working, what's not, and just what's feeling bad, what's feeling good. So it shall be interesting as we actually get to experience this meta, exactly how different my opinions will change on this, and it'll be fun to go over that with Serene Grace. But nevertheless, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed my opinions on this. For the most part, I would say solid patch, but we'll have to see how solid. I'm very unsure how solid, and I'm erring on the side of not great, but we'll see. But thank you for the patch, Riot. We definitely needed this, so thank you. I'm not ungrateful, and thank you guys for watching. You all have a wonderful rest of your day. Feel free to support in any shape, way, or form, especially leaving a comment on what exactly you agreed with and didn't agree with, or what's your opinions on this patch. But I'm gonna get the heck out of here. This is Optima signing out. Peace.